Hi everyone, welcome to the Knitting Expat podcast. This is a special episode where I'm going to be introducing you to my latest batch of patterns, which are the Beyond Vanilla Socks Part 2. I released Part 1 a few months ago now. I think it was back in May, I want to say. Yeah, I think it was May. I released Part 1, which was 4 patterns with really simple texture designs that will take you beyond the vanilla, beyond just plain vanilla socks. If you are tired of knitting vanilla socks, or if you want to mix it up a little bit but you don't want to do anything crazy complicated, these are the patterns for you. So part 1 was really simple texture stitches. There was nothing at all complicated about them, and I've kind of rated the patterns, like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 for part 2. So they go from the easiest one to the most complicated one, and even the most complicated one is still super simple. It's complicated in that it may take a little bit more thinking than the most easy one. But otherwise they are all still super simple texture stitches. Part 2 involves mostly taking a step up. It's not just knit purl textures. We are now going to be dealing with slip stitches and twisted stitches and things just that add a little bit more interest than just knits and purls. So that's where the next step comes in. I don't at the moment have plans for a part 3, but that might be something I do in the future, where I might go down the lines of doing a set of, like, maybe lace sets, a collection of lace socks or cabled socks, or just taking it to the next level of going beyond vanilla, as it were. So kind of like gradually increasing in difficulty. And to be honest, even with laces and cables, I think the designs I would come up with and would again focus on short repeats, easily memorizable, easy to do on the go, not being complicated and things like that. And that's really kind of where my head's at when I knit socks. I don't really want to be sitting there having to follow a chart, a 20-row chart or anything like that with socks. I want socks to be fun, and I want them to be enjoyable. And that's kind of what I think about with this collection of patterns, and the first collection as well. So just before we get started really quickly, I should say my name is Mina. If you don't know, I host the Knitting Expat podcast on this channel on YouTube. This is just, like I said, a special episode introducing this pattern collection. I am currently wearing one of my own design shawls. This is the Vida shawl that I designed last year, and it's named after my mum, but you can find that on Ravelry if you're interested. There is a whole collection of other patterns that go with it. And I'm actually filming this on the 3rd of August, Wednesday 3rd of August. I'm sort of batch filming a bunch of videos to cover me for the next couple of weeks. I'm not entirely sure when this video will go live. I have a few things I need to finalise on the patterns before I can release them. It's mostly just photos, to be honest. Everything else is done, and I need to get them up on Ravelry, so I'm not entirely sure what my timescale is going to be for how quickly I will be able to do that. But I am hoping to get this video out on the day or the day before that the patterns go live. So that is the hope. So let's get going. Alright, so that took a little bit longer than I expected because 1, my battery died, and 2, my dad came home. So I've sort of forced him to the other side of the apartment so he can't hear me talking to myself, and so that I don't bother him either, and charge my battery up a little bit. So hopefully that's going to be enough to get me through this video. So let's get to it. Beyond Vanilla Socks Part 2. These are the patterns. There's only 4 patterns. I've done 2 samples of each, like I did with the last set. This is just to be able to give you guys an idea of what it looks like on different types of yarn and how they knit up. So the first one in the collection is going to be number 5, and that is called Meadow. I've stuck with the nature theme here, and this is the first pair that I did, and this is out of Circus Tonic Handmade Yarns. It's lovely on her Ravelry sock base in the, oh, I can't remember the colourway name. I'll have to look it up and remember to put it on the screen for you guys. But it's really, really lovely, subtle colours, and you can see the texture. Love this camera because it does all the close-ups, and you can see the texture on there. It's a really subtle texture. This one doesn't involve slip stitches. I am so sorry if you can hear the screaming children outside. I don't know what is going on. It's the summer holidays. There we go. You can see what that texture looks like there. Yeah, so that's what it looks like on a relatively sort of you know, it's quite a neutral coloured yarn with very few colours in it, and so you just see it's a fun, lovely texture there. And then I tried it on another yarn, which is definitely much more colourful, and this does the sort of like a striped pooling kind of effect, and this is Knitter's Nightmare on her Batty sock base in Electric Funeral. I might have to close the window in a minute if that... Okay, I'll give this a go. And this is what this one looks like, what the pattern looks like on this base, on this type of colourway. So you see what I mean? It just gives it a nice subtle texture. Come on. And again, it's a very simple repeat. See if this way might show it better, rather than having any... There you go, now you can see it. That's better. I probably should have done that to begin with. But yeah, it's really fun, just very simple texture, gives it a little bit of interest. And like always, I always knit my socks with the pattern on only the front half and not the back half. With this sock, it's not, with this pattern, it's not so much of an issue. You could do it on the front and back and it wouldn't be a problem. With some of the other socks and patterns I will mention when I get to them, I really don't recommend doing the pattern on the back of the leg, only because it does tighten the fabric quite significantly, and there are notes in the pattern for how to accommodate for that and how to adjust for that. But if you did want to do the pattern on the back, you just have to bear in mind that you may have to adjust the stitch count slightly or go up a needle size or something like that to account for that. But with this pattern, that won't be a problem. And so this one was Meadow, number 5 Meadow. Then number 6 is Riverbend, and this one has 2 versions. There's 2 versions to Riverbend. So the first version that I knit up is out of this super wacky yarn, which is awesome. This is from Knitting a Love Song, and it's the lovely Kirsten, and this is on her Sidewalk Chalk colourway. And I'll give you guys a little peek at this pattern. So this is what that looks like on this colourway. And this is quite a variegated colourway, so to be honest, it's not giving it, you probably can't see it the best on this one. It's just very heavily variegated, but again, it gives it a very fun texture compared to the plain stockinette on the back. So you can really see the difference between, you know, that kind of really jumbles up the colours a bit more and gives it a bit more of a texture feel than just the plain stockinette. So even on a heavily variegated yarn, whilst you may not be able to see the pattern super clearly, it still gives that really fun sort of textured effect. And this one does involve twisted stitches, and that's really fun way of getting some movement in your yarn and in the pattern without involving cable needles, which is always handy when you're working with socks. So yeah, so you can see very clearly there the difference between the stockinette and then the texture section. It sort of really jumbles up the colours a bit more, and it really sort of enhances that speckled aspect of the pattern. And this is the staggered version. Sorry, there's 2 versions. There's the stacked and the staggered. So this is the staggered version of Riverbend, where the pattern effectively, like I said, like exactly as it sounds, it staggers across the repeats. And then the stacked version is the one that I did out of Nicole's Hugh Loco's yarn, and this is in the radioactive colourway. This is on the glitz sock, so there is some stellina in here. I'm not sure if that will show up on camera or not, I don't think so, but there is stellina in this one. This is in radioactive, and it is exactly that. It is radioactively bright. And again, you can see the difference between the plain stockinette and the texture. This is kind of why I like doing it this way as well, especially for design, so that you can really see the difference between the two. But just to give you an idea, the stacked version of Riverbend looks like this. So it's basically like a riverbend. It's bending backwards and forwards across the sock, and I really like how that works. Like I said, it's the same stitch pattern as this one, as the other sock. It's just this one's alternated and this one isn't. So it gives you a slightly different effect. It's almost like 2 patterns in one. So yeah, this is really fun as well. And this one is a 4-row repeat, and this version is an 8-row repeat, and it's only 8 rows because it's staggered versus this one isn't. So that's really the only difference between those. And this was one of those ones where I chose to go up a needle size, because this one was quite a bit tighter on my foot than I'm used to, but it's still wearable. So this is one that I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing on the back as well. It depends how much negative ease you like in your socks. It's very much a personal choice. I would suggest if you were going to do it on the back as well as the front, that you go up a needle size to allow for that. So this has probably been, you know, I knit this on 2.5mm needles, whereas if I was just doing a plain vanilla sock, I probably would have done it on 2.25mm, just because it is a slightly finer fingering weight yarn, but I think it worked out pretty well on that one. So that is number 6, Riverbend. Then number 7 is Staggered Path, and this is the first version that I did on a variegated yarn, and this is by Swatch This Fibre Arts Etsy store, and the colorway is called Crenshaw. It's on a BFL sock base, and so you can see the pattern there. Again, you can see the difference between the texture and the stockinette. And this is what it looks like that. Oops, sorry. There we go. And this one is a mixture of slip stitches and twisted stitches, so this is a really fun sort of combination of both, which is really fun. Again, it gives a really nice sort of movement to the yarn and jumbles up the colours a bit as well, and it's just really, really fun. I really like how that one turned out. And again, this is another one that I wouldn't recommend doing on the front and back. Again, you could get away with it if you went up a needle size or you adjusted your stitch count slightly, but again, it was personal preference on that one. The second version that I did, again, this pattern has 2 versions to it. The first version is just as written for any yarn, and then there's a version written for self-striping yarn, which tells you exactly when to start the patterning at colour changes. And that's the version that I did on my Turtle Pearl yarns. It's the Turtle Toes in the Om colourway, and you guys will have seen this and on the podcast relatively recently, and so you can see how when you do it at the colour changes, it's really fun and sort of really highlights those stripes beautifully with that pattern. So I love how that turned out on the self-striping. It turned out better than I'd expected. I mean, I knew it would work, but until I'd actually tried it out, I couldn't be entirely sure. I mean, look at that. Come on, focus. I just love how that sort of just picked out the colours a little bit there. And it's really, really fun. I love it. And I did a contrasting cuff, heel and toe for this one, just because. Then the final, so that was number 7, Staggered Path, and the final one, number 8, is Rock Pool. And the reason why I called it Rock Pool is when I finished knitting the first version, that's what it reminded me. It reminded me of like honeycombs and kind of like little rock pools you find at the beach. And this is the first version that I knit up out of hedgehog fibres. This is one of their club colourways. I think it was called Wink. I can't remember now exactly what it was called, but it's a really fun, gives a very sort of quilted texture to the yarn. This is one that I definitely do not recommend doing on the back. As you can see here, like this is basically the halfway mark in terms of the stitch count on the front and back. You can see how much bigger the back half of the sock is compared to the front half, because this is like how little stretch the stitch pattern has. This involves, again, slip stitches and twisted stitches, just in a different way than the previous pattern. This is possibly the most complicated of all the patterns. This is the most complicated of all the patterns, but it's still not complicated. It is so easy to knit, but it can get a little bit tiring on the wrists if you're doing it for a very long period of time. So I do recommend frequent breaks so you don't overwork your wrists too much, but it's such a fun pattern. It is so beautiful. I don't know if this is coming up as well on camera as it does in real life, but it is so three-dimensional and it's beautiful, and it doesn't involve any cabling at all to get that effect, and I absolutely love that sort of. And hedgehog fibres is known for being quite a thin yarn, their sock yarn, but when you feel the stockinette side compared to the textured side is so squishy and so thick that it really sort of works well for these thinner sock yarns as well. Then the second version that I knit was out of Knitting in France on her Sparkles base in the Purples colourway. And this was, again, I knit it on like a semi-solid tonal colourway to try and show the pattern more clearly than on a variegate. But you can see right there, you can see how quilted that looks and how beautiful that stitch pattern is. So it gives that sort of honeycomby effect, which reminds me of rock pools. And sticking with the whole nature theme of the sock collection, this is definitely one of my favourite patterns out of the lot, to be honest. I really, really like this one. And yeah, and again, it has the same sort of super squishy density to the texture section versus the plain stockinette. And I really, really love how these have turned out. I'm really, really chuffed with this. I just could not be happier with this collection. Both collections, in fact, have been so much fun to work on. It was an idea I had ever since January, ever since doing the sockathon, and it's taken me a while to get there. You know, life gets in the way, you know, there's not enough hours in the day to knit all these socks, and I was adamant that I wanted to have 2 samples of each to be able to really show off how the yarns work up and how the texture shows up on different types of yarns, different, you know, solids and variegated and striping and all that sort of stuff. I really wanted it to cover a spectrum of yarns so you can really get an idea of what this is going to look like and what the patterns will knit up like. So I really hope that you guys are as excited as I am, because I'm so excited to get this pattern collection out. Like I said, I have ideas for a part 3 and part 4, potentially involving things like lace and cables and, you know, taking it another step further. But for now, I'm not planning on doing that anytime soon. So I think I'm going to stick with just these for now. So it's just going to be part 1 and part 2 for now. In the future, if I decide to do a part 3, I will obviously announce it when I decide to do that. But for now, I'm taking a bit of a break from that. I'm going to be focusing on some other projects that I'm working on. As for when this is released, like I said, I'm not entirely sure when this will come out. I'm hoping, depending on how quickly I can get the patterns sort of finalized and formatted and get everything drafted up on Ravelry and all of that jazz. I'm hoping to have them released within the next couple of weeks. Well, I say that within the next couple of weeks from when I'm recording this, which is the 3rd of August. I'm hoping that this video will go live on the day or the day before the patterns are released, if I can work it out that way. Then what else was I going to say? Oh, I'm going to have a knit along. I'm definitely going to have a knit along. I have some prizes already, but they're back in Bahrain, so I can't show them to you until I get back. I do have prizes allocated for that. So this is going to be just a Beyond Vanilla KAL. Beyond Vanilla Socks KAL. There's not going to be any... You can knit any of the socks from the 2 collections. Doesn't have to be part 2 only. Any of the socks from the 2 collections. Works in progress count as long as you have more than 50% left to finish. The KAL will start from the day that the patterns are released for part 2. And it will go on for 2 months approximately, and I will hopefully put the exact dates and a hashtag for the knit along up on the screen over whilst I'm talking, because like I said, I haven't fully decided what those dates are yet, but those dates should pop up on screen, and there will be threads in the group for chatter and finished objects as per usual. And I will try and yeah, so hopefully that made sense. What else was I going to say? You can obviously double, triple dip into as many other KALs as you would like, as long as they qualify, obviously. I think I've pretty much covered everything for the collection. Oh, pricing. The pricing for these ones is going to be slightly different than for the previous collection. These are all going to be $3 each. You still get 3 sizes for each. You get all the details for the German short row heel that I use in my patterns. You can easily substitute in whatever heel you like. The way my patterns are written, the heels are fully customizable. You can substitute in a heel flap and gusset. You can put in a fish lips kiss heel. You can do whatever other kind of short row heel or whatever heel method you prefer. It is, I do not get offended when people substitute heels or don't use the heel that I put in my pattern. I use the heel in my pattern because it's one that I enjoy. It's one that I came up with after a bit of trial and error, and it's one that I find actually, if anything, is quicker than the fish lips kiss heel because it doesn't involve stitch markers. But I also love the Fish Lips Kiss heel, and it was my go-to heel until I came up with this one. The point is, these patterns are supposed to be fun and easy, and if you prefer a different heel, then by all means do what you prefer. And the same goes with the toes and cuffs as well. I mean, I have a standard 2x2 rib cuff on all my socks. I've just realised that's what I prefer to knit. I mean, it's the one I enjoy knitting the most. But if you want to do something else, then by all means do what you like. These are your socks. So yeah, I hope you will enjoy them. Like I said, that I don't actually know if I said it, the pricing's gonna be a little bit different. These ones are gonna be $3 each. So the collection as a whole, you're gonna be able to purchase for, let me just think, I had the maths done in my head earlier. Okay, so you'll be able to get the collection as a whole for $9. So it's $3 each. So that would be $12 if you're buying them all individually. You can get it for $9, which is basically one pattern free. If you purchase the collection as a 4-pack, basically as an ebook. If you have already purchased part 1, I will be sending out a coupon code to all of you who have already got part 1, which will give you an extra $1 off, and you can get it for $8. Because if you purchase part 1 and part 2 together, you will get it for $15, so that's $1 less than if you bought the 2 books separately. So basically part 1, the ebook is $7, part 2, the ebook is $9. But if you buy them together, you can get it, which would be $16, but if you buy them together, you can get it for $15 for all 8. And so if you already have part 1, I'm going to send you a coupon code that you can use to get part 2 for the $8. So it's as if you bought the 2 for $15 in the first place. So you guys don't get penalised for that either, because I thought that's only fair. And there'll be details in that email. I'll be sending it out like an update to the patterns, so you'll get that email and there'll be details about how long that coupon code is valid for. So so yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that was informative enough for you. If you have any questions, please do let me know. I will like I said, there's going to be a chatter thread in the group for the knit along, so if you have questions about the patterns, feel free to ask them there, or you can send me a personal message about it, and I will do my best to get back to you. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you will come take part in the knit along, and I'm looking forward to being able to show you some of the prizes when I get back. So until then, take care, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.